Good morning or good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Regina Yao, the founder and president of the Pixel Project, and I'm moderating the 10th Google Hangout session of the third annual fall edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. Through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 11 award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds towards the Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign, which aims to raise $1 million in support of the cause to end violence against women. We'll be telling you a little bit more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser, which has lots and lots and lots of exclusive author goodies. Find out more about the Pixel Project and how to stop violence against women at www.thepixelproject.net. Now today we have a very special guest with us on our Google Hangout. Please join me in welcoming Christopher Golden to Read for Pixels. Hi, Christopher.
Hi, Regina. How are you?
I'm great. Now, I'm going to tell everybody a little bit more about you. So, guys, here's what Christopher does. Now, Christopher is the award-winning New York Times bestselling author of novels such as Snowblind, Tin Men, Dead Ringers, and Of Saints and Shadows. With Mike Mignola, he co-created two cult favorite comic book series, Baltimore and Joe Gollum, Occult Detective. And his latest novel is the adventure thriller Ararat. Is it Ararat?
Ararat.
Yeah, Ararat. Golden was born and raised in Massachusetts, where he still lives with his family. And his original novels have been published in more than 15 languages in countries around the world. And Christopher has very generously donated a very special and exclusive goodie bundle. He will write a 1,000-word story featuring you as the star, and it will be set in any of his story worlds of his choice. And while you're waiting for your story, Christopher will also send you a signed and personalized first edition hardback copy of Tin Men, Snowblind, and Dead Ringers. Now, there are only 2 of these unique goodie bundles, which will make the perfect personalized treat for fans of horror and dark fantasy. So donate now to get yours before they're gone. And you can donate to get your mitts on these goodies and more via our Read for Pixels Fall 2016 Indiegogo fundraiser. So please give generously. All funds go towards stopping violence against women. And I'll share the little slide a little later in this session. But now over to Christopher, who's going to start us off with a reading. Hey, Christopher.
Hey, thank you. So I thought that I would read a little bit from Dead Ringers, which we talked about before, and it's something I think we'll probably end up talking about a bit during our hangout. Just to set up the scene that I'm going to read, we've had a situation where 2 best friends have discovered that in the city of Boston, there are people who look just like them. They're doppelgangers. And they're creepy, and it's disturbing and concerning to them. So they've gone to check out an art gallery where Lily believes her own doppelganger has her art on display. And that's where we begin with chapter 7. The cab ride passed mostly in silence, save for the African music playing through the speakers. The driver kept a clean taxi, and unlike many of those in his occupation, didn't try to engage his passengers in small talk. Occasionally, voices crackled over the radio as the dispatcher ordered other drivers to addresses where they would pick up their fares. The wipers sluiced rain off the windshield. The taxi shot through a vast puddle, tires throwing a tidal wave onto the sidewalk. "You're mad at me," Lily said. Tess kept her breathing steady, trying to ignore the throbbing in her spine. "I'm not. But let's just get there, okay?" Lily pressed her lips together and turned to stare out the window. After 20 seconds or so, she spoke a single quiet word. "Okay." Minutes passed during which Tess reminded herself that they had been incredibly fortunate to get a cab. In retrospect, they could have had the doorman at the Nepenthe Hotel call one for them, but neither of them had been thinking clearly when they had emerged from the hotel. Tess had just wanted to get away from that place. Fortunately, they had passed Octavian Steakhouse, which was high-end enough to have a doorman all its own, and he'd had them in a taxi 90 seconds after they'd asked. The African music quieted, and the driver gestured to the street corner ahead. "Any particular spot for you ladies?" Tess bent to peer through the window and saw the bright white of the First Light Gallery's shop window. She wanted to tell the driver to keep going, give him her address, and tell him to take her home. Right here's fine, Lily replied. All right, he said, his accent thick, but you'll want those umbrellas. It's nasty out there tonight. The driver pulled up to the curb, creating a smaller, slow-motion tidal wave. Tess opened the door, not waiting while Lily paid. She popped open her umbrella and slid out, sheltered herself from the rain, and stared at the gleaming white light pouring out of the gallery. It seemed impossibly cheerful on such a dreary evening. Hey, Lily said. Tess glanced at her, then blinked in surprise as she realized the cab had already pulled away, was halfway up the block, and she hadn't even noticed. You okay with this? Lily asked. Tess managed to nod and start walking. Lily caught up, hiding from the storm beneath her own umbrella. The wind whipped the rain sideways, and Tess felt it slicking her legs, colder than before now that the temperature had dropped. Her back ached a little, but the tightness would work itself out as she moved. It always did. They passed a gourmet cupcake shop. Sorry, my phone. I'm lost. They passed a gourmet cupcake shop, empty though its lights were still on. Nobody wanted a cupcake badly enough to deal with the rain. Not tonight. Just beyond the shop was a narrow alley between buildings, rain pouring off the roofs. If it hadn't turned so cold, if it had been a different night, Tess might have found it almost beautiful. Instead, she hurried on, wanting to get this over with, needing to know without question that Lily believed her. What had happened in that gloomy restaurant in the back of the Nepenthe, what she had seen in the apparition box, had been like stepping across the threshold from one world into another, like crashing her house down on a witch and opening the door into a world of bright and frightening colors she had never known existed. She couldn't stand the idea of being in that world alone. Clutching the collar of her jacket closed, she approached the steps that led up to the gallery's entrance. A couple hurried along the sidewalk from the other direction, huddled under a single huge umbrella of the sort that infuriated people on a crowded sidewalk. Tess caught a glimpse of them as they turned to go up the steps, a leggy blonde in a scarlet dress and an artfully disheveled young guy in a 1980s-inspired suit. Lily mounted the first step to follow them in, but Tess halted. What are you doing? Lily asked. A tight little ball of nausea burned in Tess's gut. The voice inside the psychomantium echoed in her head, the warning still fresh as a slap in the face. Nick's voice. She remembered the words he had spoken prior to that as well, just before he had stepped into the mirrored room. This needn't concern you. Not the kind of phrasing her ex-husband would have chosen. Lily took the edge of her umbrella and tipped it back so they could look eye to eye. What are we doing here, babe? Tess stepped up beside her, moving under Lily's umbrella as she closed her own. Listen to me, Lily. I can only imagine what your brain is doing right now. I've kind of shut it off for the moment. Exactly. Trying not to analyze any of this because it's crazy. I know all that. I want you to see your clone or whatever, but I think maybe it's not a great idea for her to see us. Lily nodded slowly. Let's just look inside. Under that single umbrella, they went up the last couple of steps and peered through the glass panel in the door. Tess had only been to a couple of gallery shows in her life, both during her college years, but both of them had been thinly attended affairs. A handful of friends and curious art lovers, wine and cheese and pompous talk. It surprised her to see that First Light had drawn a crowd. People milled about in clusters, admiring the work hung on the walls and installations. A closer look revealed glasses of wine and small plates of cheese and grapes, so maybe First Light wasn't that much different from those art school shows after all. Tess scanned the crowd. I don't see her. I do. Lily had leaned to the left, looking through the shop window instead of the door. The artwork hanging there must have blocked most of the view. Tess certainly couldn't see more than the tops of a few heads and an arm or two, but Lily stood positioned to see between two of the displayed paintings. Her face had gone slack, and she let out a loud breath that seemed to deflate her. Is this real? She said quietly. Tess held tightly to her arm, aches and pains forgotten. It is. I don't. Oh my God, Tessa, to be told is one thing, but to see her. Lily pulled away from the window and reached for the door. Heart lurching, Tess held her back. No, honey, I think that's a very bad idea. Lily hung her head and breathed in and out, steadying herself, then looked up at Tess. It's like a Christmas carol, like the ghost of Christmas past is showing me myself. But it's not you. Her name is Devani Kanda, and she's an artist. Lily leaned over to stare back through the window, peering between those two paintings behind the glass. I saw the guy, Theo, I saw how much he looked like Nick, but this is different. We should go, Tess said. Lily didn't argue. They turned together and descended the steps, staying under the one umbrella. Tess held onto her own umbrella as they reached the sidewalk, knowing that she and Lily needed to talk, to make sense of things that made absolutely zero sense. But she didn't have the words yet, didn't know how to begin. Tessa, Lily said, yanking her to a stop. Tess glanced up and saw the homeless man standing in the rain. She jerked back in surprise. The man turned toward them, perhaps as startled as they were, and she saw the dirty rag he had tied like a blindfold over his eyes. The white lights of the gallery cast him in a dim glow. His gray hair was slick with rain, beads of it running down his stubbled face. He wore a ratty, full-length black coat over clothes that looked baggy and torn, and stained with colors she did not want to think about. The blind man stood too close. "Excuse me, sir," Lily said, edging Tess sideways to go around him. A dank animal smell wafted off him, an unpleasant musk even the rain could not wash away. Tess held her breath as she moved past him, but then the man put his head back, lips curling, and his nostrils flared as he sniffed the air. Lily muttered something and nudged Tess, who kept going but could not take his eyes off the blind man as he sniffed again, like a hunting dog trying to pick up a scent. His head swiveled, tracking them as if he could see perfectly well through that filthy blindfold, and then he smiled. The grin became more of a leer, showing broken, crooked teeth. He shot out a hand and grabbed a fistful of Lily's hair. She swore, grabbing his wrist, and smashed the open umbrella against his head. Even over Lily's furious shouting and the rain and the noise of the umbrella, Tess could hear him sniffing again, breathing them in. The sound broke something inside her. "Off me, you crazy fucker," Lily screamed. Then she cried out in pain as the blind man dragged her forward by the hair, batting the umbrella away and pulling her closer. His mouth opened as if he meant to bite or lick her. Tess struck him in the temple with her closed umbrella. He reeled back, still holding on to Lily's hair. She swore again as she tried to force his fingers free. Tess went after him, hit him in the skull twice more, then turned the umbrella around so she could hit him with the handle, and smashed it across his throat. He let go, wheezing as he grabbed his throat with both hands. With a snarl, his smile returned. He lunged for Tess, arms waving, hands searching blindly. She swung the umbrella again, but somehow he caught it and ripped it from her grip. "Oh, darling girl," he said, and stalked toward her, hands raised, ready to lunge. Tess saw the frown form on his face, saw his brows knit. He paused in confusion and sniffed the air again, and then again. "No," he said, turning in a circle as if he had forgotten them entirely. "What happened? I had the scent. I know I did." Muttering and cursing, he dropped his arms and slumped into a sulk. Sighing, he bent his head back and began to sniff at the air again, wandering along the sidewalk until, hands in front of him now and searching the rainy night, he turned into the narrow alley beside the cupcake shop and vanished into the shadows. Lily stared after him. "Could you please tell me what the hell that was about?" Tess could not erase the image of the filthy blindfold from her mind. "I think I'm glad I don't know," she said. "I just want to go home, have a mug of tea, and climb into bed." They were standing in the rain, Lily's umbrella ruined and Tess's still closed. "Can I come?" Lily asked. Tess did not need to answer. She put up her umbrella and they sought out the nearest hotel, knowing they would never find an empty taxi on such an ugly night. If Lily hadn't asked her if she could come over, Tess would have invited her. Maddie was at home with the babysitter, so Tess wouldn't have been by herself, but she did not want Lily to have to go home alone. Not on a night like this. The thought brought a rueful chuckle to her lips. A night like this, as if there had ever been a night like this. There you go.
Okay, yeah, the questions are coming in now. So everyone, if you have questions, before we begin our discussion, I'll just direct you to the chat box next to the screen where you're watching this Hangout, and you can type in your questions, and Anusha, the moderator, will get your questions to me, and I'll interweave your questions in between our discussion. So get asking. This is your chance to ask Christopher questions, and he'll answer it live. So let's get started. So the female characters in many of your stories are generally complex women with agency. And there are some really formidable people among them, including Alexandra and Megan in Of Saints and Shadows, Tess Devlin in Deadbringers, and Miri and Ella in Snowblind. So what and who inspires you to create such fabulous female characters?
Oh, that's such a big question, Regina. So I think, the most important thing I guess I should say is that, I grew up, my parents were divorced when I was relatively young. My mom worked about 70 hours a week to, make sure that we were taken care of and that we were okay. I have an older sister who's 8 years older than I am. And so between my mom and my sister and her friends, I feel like I was sort of raised in an environment where women were already strong, where I always already perceived women as complex. And maybe because of that, I've always sort of gotten along better with women than I do with men in general. I definitely have some great guy friends, but I'm always more comfortable around women, especially if it's women I don't know versus men I don't know. I don't know. I think, from school age, up until now. And of course, my wife Connie and I have been together for almost 30 years. I don't know.
Okay, so it's not always easy portraying well-rounded female characters in novels, given that there's so many instances where it's just easier to stereotype them to be or act in a certain way just because they're female. So how do you work around that to create a believable and complex female character? And is it especially challenging to do so as a male author?
I think that for a lot of men it is, and I don't want to say for me it isn't challenging. It certainly is. But I feel like, your job as an author is to put yourself in the mind of the character as if the character is a real living, breathing human. And if you regard, sort of living, breathing humans as, as three-dimensional, then that should count for women and men, and for people who don't fit on the binary gender scale, or who are on the scale. And I myself, I always have said that, I certainly have a feminine side for sure. And I'm, it's funny, many years ago, Amber Benson teased me and gave me the nickname in front of about 600 people. She said I was the big hairy lesbian. There's some truth to that, so it's, I don't know. It's definitely a challenge. But it's a matter of respect, and it's not just talking about respecting women. You have to respect the characters you're creating. So you sit down and you think about it. You immerse your brain into the personality of this character, almost as if you're entering some kind of virtual reality video game world, and then you are that character. And when you are that character is making choices that are difficult and informed by their lives. And it shouldn't be, if you can't do that if you're a male author and you can't do that for your female characters, then you need to figure out why you can't and teach yourself to do it.
Yeah, and we had sort of a similar conversation with Dan Wells, whom we had on earlier, like this month for Read for Pixels, and he actually talked about this in his Reddit AMA when someone asked him about this, and then he said, well, he for his female character in his YA books, for the partial side, it took him quite a while to keep writing and rewriting the main character who's a girl, because he kept falling to stereotypes. And then finally he said it clicked when he realized, oh wait, I just write as a human being, and then it just flowed from there. I mean, yeah, women are human beings, we just as human as men. So
it's interesting to me because I've look, I'm certainly not, I certainly wasn't as aware as I am now when I was starting out of making an attempt to create more diversity in my work. But I always wrote female characters, going way back to the beginning of my career, and I really feel like it has most to do with my mother and my sister and the girls who were in my life when I was young, being more immediately people to me than a lot of the boys and men in my life. So to me, it was not unusual for me to understand their perspective. Now, I think that it was, when I was writing of Saints and Shadows, which was just re-released actually, my very first novel, I started it when I was a senior in college a million years ago now. And I'd written the first 150 or 200 pages of it, and I had some other writers commenting, and one particular writer said, "Oh, he wouldn't have dared because the main female character, Megan Gallagher, is bisexual," and he was saying he just wouldn't have dared to write that character. And to me, I didn't even understand what he was talking about. Like I had to sort of process that he was essentially saying that it would have been difficult for him to come into the story from her perspective. So I don't know. I mean, I think that it's not only, I guess I'm fortunate in that I've always felt it came naturally to me. I'm sure I didn't do it very well sometimes, and I hope sometimes I did it at least a little bit well. But I do think that it's incumbent upon writers to, engage.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think of the term, strong female character? Because it's become a bit of a reductive soundbite over the past decade. And, Joss Whedon's response to a variation of this question is, because you're still asking me that question. So what do you think of that whole term? Because right now we are seeing a whole lot of what people call the Hermione effect. Like, I think that was coined on Tumblr. They were talking about how in YA now, we just flooded. I think that's the right word for it, with really fabulous female characters carrying their own book series. People love them. People love Katniss. Hermione's not so much that, but Hermione's got a huge fan club now because she's smart. She's smart, and she does what's right, and she goes after the bad guys. She saves the day more often than the boys. So
For
I mean,
sure.
what do you think about the term strong female character? Do you think it's really reductive? And
look, these kinds of issues, like the phrase strong female character, are always dichotomous for me, right? Because on the one hand, it seems redundant now to even have to say strong female character. But on the other hand, when half of the United States of America is still willing to vote for Donald Trump, or near half, who is the most disgusting misogynist that you can imagine, clearly there's nothing wrong with saying we need more strong female characters. And until people like that, or who think like that, no longer exist, or until they're so tiny a minority that they're not garnering any attention whatsoever, I don't think there's anything wrong with telling the world we need more strong female characters and using that phrase. On the other hand, I do think that it is sort of redundant, because look, if the character is female and the protagonist, unless your book is not a very good one, she's going to be a strong female character. I mean, if that's the protagonist of the story. So I mean, really, aren't we saying if anybody's criticizing people wanting to write strong female characters, to me that's tantamount to criticizing wanting books where the main character, the protagonists, are female, right? I mean, so I want to read books where the main characters are female. I mean, not all of them, but and in those cases, they're going to be strong female characters. And I also don't think that strong female character means that the character doesn't have flaws and weaknesses and difficult moments and failures and things like that. That doesn't, just like a male protagonist who's considered strong has those things.
And no one ever says strong male character. They never do that. They always just say strong female character. Like they're people, and if they're
Right.
if they got grit, and if they and if they're working through their problems and stuff on the page, they're human. So
Right.
I think it's like strong female characters, kind of like, but you never say strong male characters.
Right.
It's still gendered, I think. But let's go to a fan question, because
Sure.
we were talking. You mentioned Buffy. You mentioned Amber Benson, and so this plays into it really well. So Sulo asks, I love that you wrote Buffy the Vampire Slayer novels, and one of the biggest cult hits of the time, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, shows the many hidden strengths of all the characters. Who is your favorite character and why?
Amber probably will be mad at me if I don't say Tara. Let me think about this for a second. Tara's definitely one of my favorites. I don't know. At the end of the day, it's not a popular answer, and I think it's not a popular answer because it's so, the other characters have a little bit more charm, and the other characters are funnier. But at the end of the day, it's got to be Buffy. Everybody wants to, yes, Faith is, sort of, rougher and kicks ass, and, Xander is funny and a goofball, and Willow's adorable when she's not, magically meddling with her girlfriend's brain. But at the end of the day, look, what I always admired about Buffy, and what I think is the thing about Buffy that changed pop culture forever, and laid the groundwork for so much, for the entire urban fantasy genre and so many other things, is that she just took it. She had this job laid on her shoulders. She didn't want it. She sort of tried to get out of it a little bit, but at the end of the day, she just did this job, this thing that was, presented to her that was a burden, and she did it in a way that brooked no argument, and she made the decisions, and her friends followed her, including the boys and the men, and so I think I have a huge admiration for the sort of determination, but not just determination. I think the sense of duty and responsibility that, even though she didn't want it, it fell on her, and she took up that sort of mantle. So I think that's why she's. I mean, again, there are a lot of other characters. I love Giles, and obviously I love Tara, for just her sweetness, and for being really the one character who is like purely good. But yeah, it's got to be Buffy.
What's you mentioned Giles, and what's really great about Giles is that he believed in Buffy so much that he even during the what the Watchers Council put her through, and he just wouldn't go with that. It just shows how much of a father figure he is. And what's striking about him is that he, as a surrogate parent, because her dad wasn't around a lot after the divorce, and she moved with her mom, right? That not once did he say, you're a girl, you can't do that.
No, certainly not. And I think actually what's great about the structure that Joss created of the Watchers Council period is that the Watchers Council is this bunch of stodgy old British guys and women, but the ones that we see for the most part are male. They're these stodgy old British guys whose entire existence is dedicated to the idea that the world, although they want to tell the girls what to do, that the world is going to be saved by a girl, really, right? And yes, Giles is a better example than most of them because he does not doubt her. But I think that's the structure of the whole mythos is structured around a real great feminist core that, I don't think that you can overstate how much Buffy changed pop culture. It offered such a phenomenal example, even subconsciously to people who were watching it. It just changed the way that people approached so much. I mean, obviously Ripley from Alien sort of started that, but Buffy was different because she was a high school kid. So yeah, I think that we owe a lot to that show.
All right, so let's push on with speaking about Giles. Going back to Giles, he's the father figure, and one thing that struck me, and then we'll go to my question, and then we'll go to a fan question after this. One thing that struck me is, we see the Slayers. There can only be one at a time, and then they're all girls, saving the world. But the Watchers Council seems to be, filled with men. We don't seem to see any female Watchers,
Right.
So that's why when I thought, what was striking about Giles is that at the end, he sacrificed himself and he's standing in the Watchers Council simply because he just felt it was inhumane. And I don't think he really ever agreed about, them controlling the Slayer.
Right.
He's there as like her dad. He's there as, as counsel. He's there to help her train, but he one ever saw himself as, I got to control my Slayer. I mean, I think the Watchers Council has told him more than once, you got to control her. She's out of control. But he never did he? He never ever saw her.
Yeah, I mean, he tried at the beginning a little bit, but it was clear that all along he was, when he was trying, he was just trying to make sure that he could train her properly so that she wouldn't be killed, and that he feared that would happen. But it isn't even so much that he let her go sort of unleashed into battle for me. It's that there were many times in the show when, although he was the one with all of the knowledge and all of the years and years of study and preparation, that he deferred to her wisdom many times, that she would, although she would have perceived herself as not a character who had a lot of wisdom necessarily, there were times when she sort of came forward with her reasoning and her logic about why, she should approach something a certain way. And he went along with it. And, the flip side of that is Wesley, when Wesley comes in and Wesley is trying to be the, no, she must do it my way and I will punish and all of that. Wesley was like the, the overcompensating stepfather, and who's trying to lay down the rules in the new household. But yeah, I mean, Giles is a great character, and I mean, obviously, I love Spike, and there's so many. I mean, the show is just full of great characters and great dialogue. But Buffy's the character I admire the most of the characters in the show.
Yeah. So, we're talking about Giles and Wesley to a certain extent. So, parents are usually the most influential role models in a person's life. So you're a dad to two young men and a teenage daughter. So what do you think parents can do to help prevent violence against women and girls in future generations, and to get boys involved in helping to do so?
Right. Look, I mean, let me just start off by saying, obviously, I'm just one guy at home with my family, and I don't know everything. But what I do know is that you have to create an atmosphere of expectation in your home, beginning, from birth, essentially, so that your children know where you stand about, and it isn't just what you say either. It's how you treat the people around you, not just in your own family, but on the street. When you're out, it's how you, and this may sound like it's going far afield, but it's how you talk to the wait staff in a restaurant. It's engendering a feeling of respect to the people around you. As far as dealing with violence against women with my children, look, you have to tell your kids, male and female, that it is never okay under any circumstances that, violence should not be the answer, period. But, there is a crisis, of virus in our society, in which, so many times when a woman is injured or a woman is killed, that it's the boyfriend or the husband who's responsible. And we see that pattern over and over and over again. And so you have to start from the beginning with the boys. And my wife and I certainly expressed to our sons what our expectations were from them. And also, we've had a long conversations with our daughter, and it's very difficult to have certain conversations with my daughter. She just turned 14, and it's hard as a father to have to talk to her from both sides, to say, on the one hand, it is never the fault of the woman who's being assaulted, that if there is violence done against you, it is not your fault. And on the other hand, the realities of the world demand that you create a certain amount of awareness, that you grow up with a certain amount of awareness and preparation and consciousness about the things that could happen and what you can do to prevent them from happening, but that there's only so much you can ever do to prevent them from happening. And so it's all, it's just coming at it from both sides. And what's great is I'm so proud of my kids, and I'm especially proud of my daughter, who in the 8th grade, and she'd be so embarrassed if she knew I was talking about her, but who in the 8th grade is the feminist in her class, is constantly like putting the boys in their place, putting the girls, giving them a reminder, telling the teachers, who send the boys out to take the trash barrels out, hey, I'm just as strong as they are. Why aren't you sending the girls out to take the trash barrel out? It's these small roots of sexism that grow into giant trees. And she's trying to, kill the roots before they grow. So I'm really proud of her.
Yeah, and recently, like in feminist, in the activist circles, they were talking about one mother was talking about how her girl was telling her male honors teacher that the assignment was pick someone famous to interview and reach out to them. So that was their high school assignment. And she said, I'm going to pick Gloria Steinem. And then the male teacher said, no, you will never get Gloria Steinem. And he laughed at her. And guess what? She emailed Gloria Steinem, and Gloria Steinem wrote back and said, he laughed, did he? Or something to that effect. I'm on tour now, but I can answer 5 questions. And so her mom announced that to everybody, and then basically the gist of all the reactions from everyone who was following this story is, burn, male teacher, burn,
Yeah.
So this kid is gonna have Gloria Steinem to interview for her class project. So yeah, it's it's not just parents, right? It's what teachers and other grown-ups in the community, the messages that they send to the kids.
It is. And the thing is that there's so many teachers who mean well, who think that they're doing the right thing, and many of them are. But some of them are, a little behind the times, and they need parents to raise kids who are going to challenge those teachers, so that your child goes into a classroom, and when the child sees a situation that they think needs correcting, that they'll speak up. And that's how we affect change. That's how we create awareness. And that's the best thing we can do always is to speak up.
All right, so everyone, this is I'm Regina Yao. I'm the founder and president of the Pixel Project. I'm here having this lovely chat with Christopher Golden, and I see that there's some new people joining us here watching this chat. And if you have any questions, please do type them into the chat box to the right of the screen, and we'll weave your questions in with the discussion to ask Christopher, and he will answer it for you. We have about 25 to 30 minutes left, so ask away so that we can fit them in while he's still on air with us. All right, so going back to geek culture, let's talk about geek culture, because that's making a lot of waves now with people pushing back about violence against women, including harassment, online harassment at conventions, the misogyny in it. especially I think gaming and some depictions of women in comic books. So the question would be, geek culture in general, including science fiction and fantasy, has had its share of critics, saying that it's still too male-dominated despite a rising number of prominent, well-respected, and well-known female authors, comic book creators, game designers, etc. So what do you think needs to be done to make geek culture as a whole, whether it's comics or gaming or books or movies and so on and so forth, more welcoming for women and girls?
You know, I think that it's a combination of elements. I absolutely think that the situation is improving, and it has been improving, I think, dramatically over the last few years. And the reason it is improving, as far as I can tell, is voices. It's creators and fans standing up and speaking against the ridiculous, misogynist bullshit. It's companies.
Sorry, stop you there. Family friendly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did swear during my reading as well. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry about the swearing during the reading. Anyway, so Marvel and DC, have done a lot, and so many other comic book companies have been doing a lot to create characters, to change the environment. They all have certain sins. They all, some of them have staff members who have been called on the carpet for their behavior. But at the end of the day, I feel like the changes that we're seeing and that we need to continue to see are coming from the voices being raised from the creators and from the fans who are saying that this is not okay, because you have so many trolls. There are so many people out there that are horrible. What our friend Mrs. Clinton would call deplorable. Secretary Clinton would call deplorable. And those people are there. The trolls are always going to be there. The problem with the trolls is that their voices are so loud. Probably because they live under bridges and it amplifies their voices somehow. But their voices are so loud, and so we need to have loud voices in response to them, and we need to band together, and that's going to be the case whether you're online or whether you're at a convention. I posted a blog recently where I talked about wanting to essentially be the wingman. That if I'm at a convention and you're there, and you feel like unsafe in some way, and you need somebody to come and just sort of get you through a circumstance, that I'll be happy to do that, and not in any kind of goon squad way. That if you have been harassed or assaulted and you want to go talk to the people who are in charge of the convention and make a report, or if you want to talk to the police, or if you just want a quiet space where you feel safe, I will do everything in my power to be with you, to help you make that happen. If you just need to feel safe walking to your car, I'll get somebody else to come with me, and we'll walk you to your car. If you're a trans person and you want to use the restroom and you want to have somebody scout it to make sure it's empty, or whatever it might be, whatever the circumstance might be. But I'm only one person, and while obviously I can't influence everybody, I really just want to encourage fans and creators who are at conventions of any kind to make the same kinds of statements publicly, to get out there and say that you will be the wingman or the wingwoman for anyone who feels like they need help creating a safe space for whatever that moment might be. And those are the ways that we can make a difference, so that the trolls' voices aren't quite so loud.
Yeah, I mean, the troll, we're thinking of the Pixel project will be engaging with gamers next. And, we've been talking to gamers, and a lot of them said, Gamergate is not us. They're quite, some of them are very vehement about that. They were saying, that's most of us just want to play our games in peace. We want to welcome everybody. Games should be fun. Games should be for everybody, And as you know, the Gamergate is quite an issue, and it's ongoing. It's still terrifying to a lot of people that we talk about the gaming community,
including friends of mine.
Yeah, and
but I feel like that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Regina.
Oh no, we're just saying that a lot of gamers just want to, they want people to know that the majority of the gaming community is not like that, that they are accepting, that everyone is welcome, but that the trolls are far too loud, as you
But
say.
don't you think that, to me, I feel like that's like, you know, hashtag not all gamers.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, if that's true, if there is if the trolls who are behind Gamergate are a small minority of the people who are involved in gaming, then it's not too much to ask for the gamers who aren't like that and who don't want to be represented that way, don't want people to perceive them as being part of that, could take a little time away, a few minutes away from their gaming, to speak up, to go on social media, to post and say, you know, what they really stand for, what they really believe in. And I look, I mean, it's just like being an American and knowing that the world is looking at our country and seeing what is going on here and wanting to basically tell the world, like, look, we know that you're seeing Donald Trump and all of the horrible things that he represents, but we're not like that. And that's not what America is really supposed to stand for, and that's not what we are. But if we don't stand up against him, if we don't stand up and say like that, you know, then the perception of the whole world is that that's all we are. So if you're a gamer or a comics fan or a science fiction and fantasy fan or whatever you may be, and the trolls are out there speaking, and you don't want people to perceive the thing you love as being that, then it's incumbent upon you to raise your voice and show the rest of us that the thing you love is not that.
It takes courage, and you know, we are going to, if there are any gamers out there, I'm just going to say this, if there are any gamers out there who feel really strongly about this, please contact the Pixel Project, because we are going to start working with gamers. We're already talking to gamers, and we want to help you. It takes a lot of courage. We know it takes a lot of courage to stand up to these bullies, to stand up to the trolls, to stand up to Gamergators. But, you know, come contact us. Let's see what we can do together. There's power in numbers.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's about the numbers. And just to be 100% clear, I want to make sure that people understand I'm not criticizing. I'm imploring, you know, I'm encouraging, and you know, I have all the love and respect in the world for these people who are in any of the things we love, are in any of the fields that we love, who don't feel that way. But I just feel like everybody needs to sort of raise their voices together in these instances.
Yeah. So, you know, just come find us. Just come find us. You know, this is, of course, risking us getting pelted by trolls, but, you know, just push through, come find us. We're here. We're not accusing anyone of anything. We're not blaming anybody. We want to talk to you. We want to listen to you, and we want to help you, you know, get together with everyone else that we already work with, and that's a lot of people that we have just swung past 51,000 followers on Facebook yesterday. We have more than 21,000 followers on Twitter as well. So you're not alone. If you want to stop, you want to speak up, you want to say something, you're not alone. Christopher's here, we're here. We have 60 authors whom we've worked with, who I'm sure some of you are fans of as well. You know, they're all standing up to say, so we're here. There are more people to help and more people in a community than you think. So anyway, going back to this, there's a fan question that progresses from this. It says, it's from TT Zuma. And TT says, what do you say to a man who struggles with the way he has treated women in the past? I'm talking more about sexist attitudes, not physical abuse, and feels tremendous guilt over it.
Oh, that's such a great question. Look, no, it's funny. I was just talking about something similar to this the other day. We can never, there is not a man out there, I don't care who the guy is, there is not a man out there who has always been a saint. Not a woman out there who's always been a saint, by the way, right? But this is a changing world, and we're all learning and we're all growing. And, you know, there were lots of things that I did as a kid, as a teenager, in college, that I feel shame over, that I feel guilt over. You know, we're always going to have those things in our lives. And even today, I try to be as aware and enlightened as I can be. But I know that there are times when I talk over a woman. I've had conversations with female friends of mine about white knighting, and it's just how we're wired. You know, it's how I'm wired. You know, and as sins go, it's a smaller one, but it's still there. You know, so we can only learn, we can only grow, we can only, you know, open our minds and our hearts. And I feel like, you know, locking yourself up with feelings of guilt and regret about past behaviors is only preventing you from growing and becoming more enlightened and becoming more informed about what the world expects of us now, what the world needs from us now, more importantly than expects from us, what the world needs from us now.
Yeah.
So that's where I stand.
Okay. Now, in your opinion, how can authors strike a balance in their storytelling between telling a story, telling a really great story, and also raising awareness about sexism and gender-based without being pedantic or preachy?
I don't think it's a balance at all. I feel like you need to be informed, and you need to present diversity in your characters and in your stories and in your locations and in the experiences of your characters. And you need to come to the story from the perspective of your beliefs. Telling the story, telling a good story, is your job. But if you believe the things that you espouse, like if you have those feelings and those beliefs, those things are going to come out naturally in the telling of your story. You know, I don't go into plotting a story with an agenda. I sometimes populate my stories with certain characters with an agenda in mind, but I don't tell the story with any agenda. The story is the story. You know, I try to be aware of the effect now. I never used to. There were things in earlier novels of mine that I would take out now. If I were writing them now, that certain scenes would not go into the book. But just like the previous question, you grow, you become aware, and that's going to change your writing style and your consciousness about the characters you're creating. But the story, write your story.
All right. So here's another question from Sulo, and it's also to do with writing. She says, you co-authored Cemetery Girl with Charlene Harris, and Charlene was one of our, you know, she was last year she was one of our Read by Pixels authors, and she's a big supporter of the Pixel Project. We love Charlene. She's awesome.
She is awesome.
Yeah, she is so funny too. So how did the collaborative process work? That's what Sulo wants to know when two people write a book.
You know, what was great is that I've collaborated a lot over my career with lots of different people, you know, with Mike Mignola and Amber Benson and all kinds of people. And Charlene and I were at a convention together, and we were having a drink, and she was telling me the story that she wanted to do. And she didn't think that she'd ever be able to do it as a novel because of other commitments. And I said, you know, maybe you should just do it as a comic or a graphic novel. And about, I don't know, months later, she called me up and said, you know, I'm not gonna do my imitation of Charlene's Texas accent because she might murder me. But she called me up and said, you know, I've been thinking about that, and I'd like to do it, but I'd like you to do it with me. So we took the basic concept and we plotted it out together for 3 books, and you know, sort of broke it down. And the great thing is that one of Charlene's goals was that she wanted to learn how to write comics. She'd never done it before. She didn't know the first thing about how it was done to create a comic book script that would be adapted by an artist. And she wanted to learn. And a lot of people, when they saw that this was happening and it was coming out, just assumed that I was doing all the writing, and that Charlene, had just come up with the idea, or we'd come up with the idea together. But that wasn't the case at all. Charlene wanted to learn to write comics, and so we did it together. We broke down the scenes, and we each took, in turns, like a regular collaboration. I would take a scene, and she would take a scene, and she would revise what I had done, and I would revise what she had done, and and by the time we were done with the first book, she knew how to write comics, and then we wrote the two more.
Yeah. So let's go back to if, oh, by the way, more people have joined us. So welcome to everyone who's just joined us. If we have a few minutes left with Christopher today, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box next to the screen. We'll read them out to Christopher. Are you okay staying a little bit over time, Christopher?
Of course, yeah, I'm having a great time.
Yeah. Okay, so, right, so, as a male author, do you think it's important for stories that prominently feature women to pass the Bechdel test? In fact, even stories that don't prominently feature women, that have some female characters in it, do you think it's important for stories to always pass the Bechdel test? For those of you who are not in the know here, the Bechdel test means two female characters in a TV series or book or movie who talk about something other than a male character or a man.
So before I answer that, I want to just go back 1 second to the topic we were discussing before, and say about standing up and being brave, that I'm well aware that it is much easier for me as a man, because I'm not going to get nearly as much abuse. It just by nature, just the way the world is, I'm not going to get the same kind of abuse. So it doesn't take as much courage for a guy to stand up and say the things that I want to say as it does for a woman, and I understand that. As far as the Bechdel test is concerned, do I think that certainly I don't think that way about short stories, because they're very short. I definitely feel that I'm just trying to think. Do I think that every book should pass the Bechdel test? I would say probably I would not be able to say every book. I don't think it's a requirement for me to be able to read a book and say that book needs to pass the Bechdel test. That said, I would like the books that I read to pass the Bechdel test, and if the books that I'm reading have prominent female characters, then absolutely I think that they should pass the Bechdel test. I think it's weird that I've always found it strange when people are surprised when they read something I've written or something another male writer has written, and they're surprised to find, female characters communicating with one another. That I find that fascinating. So yeah, I think that if books have a prominent female character in them, absolutely they should pass the Bechdel test. But I don't think that necessarily every book has to pass that test. It depends what the book is about, where it's located, what your focus is. But I hope that if your book has female characters in it, that they're doing more than just talking about the male characters, for better or worse.
Yeah, because in real life, we don't always talk about just men, Like.
Yeah, I'm aware. Well, unless usually you're talking about what idiots men are. That's a popular topic. But no, yes, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. I think it depends on the book, but if the book has prominent female characters in it, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous otherwise.
And this whole thing about, you were talking about a backlash that you don't experience because you're a man instead of, woman. And that this whole year has been, part of it has been an illustration of it. With the new Ghostbusters. I mean, before the show even came out, oh my goodness, look at the amount of hate that was underneath the trailer. That
Right.
was, to a woman, I when I was growing up, I watched Ghostbusters, right? I watched the original, and and I was so excited about this one. You know, and my little niece, who's 12, was so excited about this. Oh, it's all girls, you know, girls being scientists, girls fighting ghosts and stuff. And then when you go to the, you know, when you went to watch the trailer, I had to hide the comments box from her because it's so bad. It was. And then they continue all for the film. And now that the DVD is released, they continued. And in the meantime, they harassed Leslie Jones till she dropped out of Twitter for a while. I mean, what would you say to those fanboys? What would you say to those guys who are just spewing all that hate, that misogyny?
What would I say to them?
Yeah.
Well, you said it's a family show, so I can't say the things that I would say to them, except to say that, you know, there's no place in the human race or public discourse for the kind of hate and small-minded bigotry and you know, I imagine that they all have Trump's small hands, if you know what I'm saying. I don't understand. I mean, it really just boggled my mind when that started to happen. Why do you care? Why do you care? The thing that you loved is still there. It's still, I mean, if they'd made it with 4 new male actors, why would that have been better than 4 female actors? It's still not the thing that you grew up with. It's still something new. So love the thing that you loved then, but what difference does it make? And you know what? It's never about that, Regina. We know. It's not about they claim that it's you're ruining our childhood. It's never about that. You know, it's about that they claimed it as a male thing. It's like they had to urinate on it like dogs. And you know, it's disgusting and appalling, and it has no place in public discourse at all. You know, there's so much that is happening constantly now with all of this, not just with Ghostbusters, but you see it all the time. And there's just no and again I think that we have to remember, and it's so hard to remember because, you know, the trolls' voices are so loud and so vicious, and they put so much effort into it. They put so much effort into tearing down the things that threaten them, you know. We just have to remember that those trolls aren't as numerous as they would like us to think, that their opinions aren't as popular as they would like us to think, and even if they become numerous and they become popular, that there are the rest of us out here who are open-minded and love what you love, and even if we don't love what you love, we love that you love it, you know. So I don't know. What I'd say to those guys is go back to your mommy's basements, and I'd love to track down their parents and have a conversation with them in my time machine, you know.
Yeah, and if you watch the original Ghostbusters movie, like there's right at the beginning, there's some really, really uncomfortable scenes there, you know, like a professor hitting on his student, and then after that making inappropriate remarks about menstruation and thinking that is funny, you know, and I look back at it and I'm like, okay, you know, I did enjoy that, but I'm looking at that now through grown-up eyes and thinking that wasn't actually really funny. It's not, you know. Okay, maybe I've lost my sense of humor or something else. Oh, and guys, you can't see me, but you know, while Christopher was talking about trolls, I was rolling my eyes so hard. Credit Christopher for not laughing while he was going on about that, while I was rolling my eyes so hard.
Regina did make some funny faces.
Yeah, and basically it's like, and you know, Paul Feig actually talked about this. You know, he said at one point he actually just snapped because all the way through the filming, all the way through all that, you know, he kept getting, him and everyone on the cast who's actually on Twitter actually kept getting blasted for it. You know, Leslie Jones, him and stuff. And then at one point he actually, in the interview, he actually talked about this and he said that he snapped and he tweeted back at someone and called them a name that is not family friendly. And then his wife said to him, "Do you really think that's the best way to deal with this?" And then he sort of sat down and thought about it and he said, "Well, no, but you know, this one time, just this once, it just felt really good to actually like call that troll a non-family."
Listen, and you do, I mean, you know, I think that there are trolls out there who probably could be reasoned with, but they're never going to be reasoned with under these circumstances. I've had conversations with my daughter, and this is pertinent, about fraternity culture at fraternity houses in the United States on college campuses, and how studies have been done that show that when male students enter a college campus, one male student is no more likely to commit sexual assault than another male student, but that once those male students are members of a fraternity, they are 60% more likely to commit sexual assault than other male students who are not members of fraternities. And so it's clear that that is a cultural issue. That's an issue of the culture of the fraternity society. And that's what we see with trolls. And there are wonderful things that the internet provides. We would not be as progressive a society, and we would not be in the culture war that we're in if not for the internet, if not for social media. So many wonderful things happen, and so much awareness and enlightenment takes place because of social media. But that also gives the power to the trolls, because it creates an ability for them to reinforce each other's bad behavior. So that's what we're fighting. You're fighting that culture. And I think that, again, it's our voices have to be louder. Laws have to be passed, protection. And I have to say that Twitter and other social media companies bear, I think, a huge amount of responsibility that they're not holding up their end. That if you have, someone, I believe that Twitter absolutely should require every single person who's registered on Twitter to have their identity verified, and that if those people harass others, that those people should be banned from Twitter forever. Period. End of discussion. It's not difficult. It would not be difficult for them to require you to verify your identity in order to have a Twitter account, and not difficult to ban you from Twitter if you abuse people. And so to me, the fact that they won't do that, or that they haven't done that, is just an abdication of what I think is a responsibility they have, not just to their customers, but to the public in general.
Yeah, and you're right. This is why this is what the Pixel Project does. I mean, this is why we work with musicians, artists, we work with authors, we work with people that we work with people who produce culture, because in order to change, and this is just one aspect of it. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of other aspects that everyone needs to address, but I think when it boils down to that, comes down to it, we chose to focus on pop culture and the arts because it has a disproportionate, aside from politics, it has a disproportionate sway over culture. And to stop violence against women, one of the things that needs to be changed is culture. And it is, if you talk to anyone who's working on the ground, say, for example, female genital mutilation, and currently that is the form of violence against women that we are winning a war against, that the anti-violence against women community is winning the war against. They are village, family by family, one by one, on the ground, and a lot of the anti-female genital mutilation activists, specialist activists, talk about culture. They talk about how we're going to change culture. How do we change mindsets? Who do we talk to? Who are the influences in that village, in that town, in that culture? They go to them, they work with them first. This is why the Pixel Project approaches and works with so many authors, so many music artists, because you guys create the characters and the worlds and the music and the tunes and the performances that so many people, including the trolls,
right,
so many people love. You create the games that so many people love. And what we ask ourselves, what if the creators all stepped up and
You froze there, Regina. I'm not sure what happened, so I'll reply, I guess. I don't know. My feeling is I was thinking about Star Wars. I was thinking about Chuck Wendig creating a gay character for his
Oh yeah,
first.
oh my goodness, that was. I mean,
Right.
what? No, I mean that was. No, I have no words for that. I mean, Chuck was literally at one point posting screenshots of, grammatically incorrect.
It's always grammatically incorrect. The trolls are always grammatically incorrect. But you're right. So it's that. But I also think about about Star Wars: The Force Awakens and Rogue One coming out, and being able to bring my daughter to see Daisy Ridley as a star of the Star Wars movie, the clear and obvious main character, and her yelling at Finn, stop trying to hold my hand. I don't, essentially, like, I don't need you to hold my hand. I don't need that from you. And the fact that the two main characters are a woman and a young black guy, and then the main character of Rogue One, again, is a woman, it drives the trolls insane. It drives them crazy. But, this is how we have to, this is the world we live in. And so we have a responsibility to present that world, and that's why we need Chuck to do what he did, and J.J. Abrams and is it Ryan Johnson who's doing Rogue One? To do what they're doing. So look, I think it's happening, and I think that the louder the trolls' voices get, that means the more we're getting to them, the more that we're making progress toward.
Chuck calls them dinosaurs and meteors. He's like, they are the dinosaurs. They're standing there waving their tiny little arms around. And then there's a culture, the media represents cultural change, and it's just coming for them. And Chuck was like, we'll just wait till the meteor gets here and just smashes all of them to bits.
Well, the thing is, like, I don't want to wait till the meteor gets here. I want people to keep making more meteors.
Yeah.
That smash the little dinosaurs to bits. Because I feel like the louder their voices get, the more that we're getting to them, the more progress we're actually making. And anyway, so yeah.
Okay.
If you haven't figured it out by now, I babble a lot.
But it's all about the right stuff, because we're talking about, if you just joined us, Christopher Golden and the Pixel Project, we're talking about violence against women, sexism and misogyny in pop culture, and the wider community. And there is one more question from the audience. And guys, we only have like 10 minutes left. So if you've got any other questions, please stick them in the comments box, chat box next to the screen. I will ask Christopher for you. So we have another question, which is from Ira B1. And she says, what is your favorite novel or series to read?
Oh, to read? Oh, boy. Well, I mean, look, my two favorite novels ever are The Stand by Stephen King and A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving. Those are my two favorites. But I have a lot of other favorites. It's just so hard. Any reader would have to say that they have so many, oh gosh. I mean, one of my favorite series to read, of course, we were talking about Charlene, and the Sookie Stackhouse books are so much fun. I just love them. They just make me laugh, and especially because knowing her, I can hear her voice as she's reading this, because they're so her.
It is, because I didn't realize it was so her until we met her, and read for Pixels, and then now whenever I read my Sookie Stackhouse books, there's this one scene in the library where Sookie was being pursued by the librarian was being attacked by a werewolf or something, and then Sookie was there, and she was holding some kind of pointy thing. I can't remember what. So of course she goes and helps the librarian, and then somehow in the scuffle, the werewolf, I think, falls in a weird angle, and then accidentally impales himself on that pointy thing that Suki's holding, and then of course he sort of falls to the ground, right? And then Suki and a librarian, both women standing there looking at the body on the floor, and then Suki says, "Uh-oh," and then now I hear that in Charlene's Texas accent.
Yes, you can't not hear it in her voice if you've ever spoken to her or seen her interviewed. I don't know, other favorites. I'm a huge fan of Walter Mosley's Easy Rawlins novels.
Mhm.
I do read a lot of crime and mystery books as well. One of the best books I've read recently is a debut novel from a woman named Kat Howard called
Mhm.
Roses and Rot, which it's Kat with a K, and I emphatically endorse and recommend it to everyone. So I don't know. I could talk about books and authors for the next 2 hours.
Okay. Oh, there's another question from TT Zuma that's just come in. TT wants to know, will there be a sequel to Snowblind? And if so, will it take as long as the Bloodstained Oz sequel to write?
Okay. So Bloodstained Oz is a book that Jim Moore and I put out. It's a novella only, not for the faint of heart. Trigger warnings abound, just FYI. It was a novella, and it took us 10 years to write the second one, which comes out, I don't know, soon. But those are short.
Years?
What's that?
10 years?
It took us 10 years, and it's only about 200 pages, 150 to probably 200 pages. Took us 10 years. But no, I don't have any plans to do a sequel to Snowblind, but I do foresee following up with certain elements from that story, maybe in other stories. I do like the snowstorm as a setting for weird and uncomfortable and horrific things to happen. Yeah, I will say though that we've been trying to develop with Blumhouse Television. We're trying to develop a Snowblind television series. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but we shall see. If you want more of that story, then maybe we'll get it through TV rather than through books. So we'll see.
Okay, fingers crossed, because sometimes TV adaptations don't. I mean, there's not going to be an adaptation, but sometimes you find that TV adaptations don't do the original book justice at all.
Right.
Yeah. So hopefully, fingers crossed. Hopefully, it'll be as good as Daredevil.
That would be great. That would be great.
Oh yeah, and Luke Cage has just been released too.
I know, and the only reason I'm not watching it tonight is because I'm spending this time with you.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone, because you can't see
you could be watching it as well. You could be watching it as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. I think I'm gonna watch it on Monday when I have the day off, and I'm gonna like binge watch it. There's no way you can't binge watch something like this.
Well, I was excited watching the trailer for Luke Cage. I was excited for all kinds of reasons. But one of those reasons was that there's a scene in the barbershop, and he's sitting and he's reading a Walter Mosley novel. So I was like, that tells me so many great things about if they're taking inspiration from Walter Mosley. That's great.
Okay, so the last two questions, and then we'll tell everybody where to get these really awesome goodies that you've donated. Oh, guys, just before we go to that, if you ever wanted to be the star or the hero in one of Jim's story worlds, you're gonna love what Jim has donated. But I'll tell you a little bit more about it after this. So, final two questions. So, in your opinion, how can authors like yourself best support efforts to kick off social change to end violence against women?
You know, again, it's such a huge question, Regina, but I think that sometimes the biggest questions have the smallest building blocks as their answers. You know, I feel like just like as parents, my wife and I have to create an atmosphere of expectation in our own household for the way that we expect our children to behave, not just in what we say, but in the attitudes that we bring to our day-to-day conversation and behavior, I think that we need to, all of us need to bring that same atmosphere of expectation out into the world, both through our work as writers and entertainers and creators, and through our interaction with fans and the public. And, I know that there are a lot of creative people who are hesitant to do that because they don't want to alienate readers. They don't want to, they don't want to lose fans or whatever it might be. But, the world is more important than how many people read your book. And, violence against women, misogyny, mistreatment of anyone, the inequality in our society is more important than how many people read your book. And so all I can say is that you have to bring that same atmosphere of expectation out into the world with you in your work and in your personal interactions. And we can all do that, not just creative people.
Yeah, Joe Hill was our very first Read for Pixels author. And he actually said something that resonated, I think, with a lot of authors as well as, over the last couple of years that we've worked with so many of you. He said we have stories, because storytelling is such a powerful way. It's one of the most important ways of transmitting culture and also teaching people about values, about systems, about ethics, about about what's right and what's wrong. And he said stories matter, storytelling matters. We have to tell stories. That was his take on it when we chatted to him. Okay, so final question before we go, lest the gods of Google suddenly cut us off, because sometimes they do.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a Captain Obvious question, but just for the record, you have been so very incredibly supportive of our Read for Pixels campaign and our anti-violence against women work as a whole. Why do you support us as an organization, and why do you support the wider cause to end violence against women?
I mean, the Pixels Project and Read for Pixels in general, or the Pixel Project and Read for Pixels in general, they're out there, you're out there, gathering people like me together to raise our voices. And just like we were talking about, the only way to drown out, the only way to make the cultural shift, to make the changes, is if the voices are raised together, is to change the story, to change the narrative, and change our stories. So as far as what you're doing and why I admire it so much, that's the reason that I feel like, the more that ordinary people, and we're all ordinary, but you know what I mean, the more that the people who aren't writers and the people who are just consumers and readers and viewers of creative materials see the world presented as it really is, instead of the darker version that is so often presented to them. The more we can do that, the more we can change things. The more we can normalize equality, right? And that's what we want. We want to normalize equality so people look at it as something and they think obviously. We hope that that people look at it the way that most people now will see gay marriage. Young people growing up in the United States now, it's totally normal for them, for gay people to be able to be married. And that's what we need. We need, to normalize equality. As far as, fighting violence against women, I've seen it in my life. I've known too many women who've suffered, who've been raped or assaulted, and I can't endure it. You can't stand by and know that to so many people this is acceptable behavior. And not only is it acceptable behavior, but even people who would never commit those crimes themselves treat it like it's not a big deal. I applaud the state of California, who the other day removed the statute of limitations on rape cases, so that now it doesn't matter if it was 60 years ago, you can still be tried and sent to prison. That's important. So why do I care about violence against women? Because I'm a human being.
Okay. Now, before we go, there are a couple of people, you mentioned Jim just now in relation to the Bloodstained Oz sequel. And there are a couple of people going, who is Jim?
Sorry. My co-author, James A. Moore, who is the best-selling fantasy author of this Seven Forges series, among other things. One of my dearest friends, wonderful guy, and we wrote this novella Bloodstained Oz together like 10 years ago, and the sequel. But again, trigger warnings. Not Bloodstained Oz is not for everybody, not for the faint of heart in any way. So FYI.
Okay, now we have 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna switch myself onto the screen. Everybody, yeah, you can see me eye rolling. No, not really. And just tell you guys where to get these awesome goodies. Hi everybody, where to get these awesome goodies from Christopher. So as mentioned earlier, Christopher has very generously donated very exclusive and special goodie bundles, and they include Christopher writing a 1,000-word story featuring you as a star, and it will be set in any one of his story worlds of your choice. And while you're waiting for your story, Christopher will send you a signed and personalized first edition hardback copies of Tin Men, Snowblind, and Dead Ringers. So that's 3 books. And there are also plenty more wonderful treats and rewards from all the other authors and publishers. For donors, these range from book bundles to Skype calls, and we're aiming to raise at least $5,000, and every donation counts, because this today is actually, in Asia where I am right now. It's October 1st, so we've already kicked off Domestic Violence Awareness Month here. So all throughout this month, we're going to try and hit. We've already raised 55%. I mean, $2,760, I think, towards the $5,000 goal. And so we hope you can help us meet the $5,000 goal by the end of October. And and if we go beyond that and get to 10,000, guess what? Jim C. Hines, T. Morris, and Chuck Wendig are going to recreate gender-flipped poses. Are going to do gender-flipped poses of comic book covers, women on comic book covers, the ones that make you think, oh, I really need a chiropractor even looking at this. So yeah, Christopher is actually smiling now.
So they're gonna pose for these pictures themselves?
Yeah, we actually selected those pictures. I'm being very careful to select those that would not send them to the chiropractor too quickly.
Excellent.
Yeah, and you know what? You can donate. Let me screen share this because we're almost out of time. There you go. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so you can donate to get Christopher's goodies, or donate to where it's helping us get to 5K or 10K. You can go to Indiegogo at is.gd/r4p Indiegogo 2016. And if you're a huge epic fantasy fan, Steven Erickson and us are having an auction of his personal copies of his Subterranean Press editions of his Malazan books. So you can head over to is.gd/r4p Malazan auction. And you can find out more about Read for Pixels at is.gd/Read for Pixels. And once again, to find out more, hang on. I'm back on screen. Yeah, and to find out more about violence against women and what you can do about it, you can visit the Pixel Project's website at www.thepixelproject.net. And if you want to find out more about the Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign, visit reveal.thepixelproject.net to learn more about it, and please donate generously. All funds go towards helping stop violence against women. And now Christopher and I have 2 minutes to go, so we'll say bye. I'll put Christopher back on the screen. So any last words, Christopher? We got 2 minutes. Well, one minute. But 1 minute. Any last words?
In 1 minute, my only last comment is that I hope people will donate generously, not just to see Chuck Wendig and those other writers in strange comic book poses, but that is a great reason, but also just to help stop violence against women.
All right, so everybody have a good day or good night wherever you are. This is Christopher and I signing out. Bye.
Bye.